So, Kerry, we will open up with the Daily Mail,
which tells us, finally, Starmer comes clean. He will soak the middle classes after repeatedly denying tax rises before election. He didn't repeatedly deny them. He just said it 50 times. That's not repeatedly. It's quite a few, though, isn't it, really? But then, of course, it wasn't his fault because he found a black hole, which is, of course, the phrase of the age. And we heard his speech today from the Rose Garden at number 10, which wasn't very rosy, but certainly full of thorns. And he basically repeated the word pain, pain, pain over and over again, so much so that even when he talks about closing loopholes on non-doms, I've started to think he might mean anyone who's not a dominatrix, just to increase the whipping we're all about to get. Of course, this has been done before. We saw, Cameron, when he came in, warned that we went into all the austerity and he said he'd found this big hole and so on. But this doesn't feel quite the same. And it also feels like he's fairly certain he's going to have 10 years in power, I think. And when he's talking about 10 years of this pain, and then it's going to get better, I wonder how that feels for some of the pensioners who are losing their fuel allowance, many of whom will wonder if they've actually got 10 years to wait.
I mean, it is. It's hard to hear for at least two reasons, Nick. One, there's a sort of suggestion that there's been 14 years of partying and hedonism, and now we're having to pay the bill and clean up, which hasn't been my experience of the last 14 years. And secondly, there is this kind of implication that, that he's inherited like a completely unknowable catastrophe that he couldn't possibly have anticipated.
Yes, this black hole in the finances that he didn't know about, which gives him carte blanche to do anything he wants, according to people like James O'Brien. But it's incredibly grim. Things only get worse. He's wasting the Oasis reunion, the good vibes we could have. It's an open goal that he's missed. We could go back to Britpop and Tony Blair vibes, but he hasn't got that. It's all grim, and it's also vague. So this idea it's going to be tough for a while, but what's going to be at the end? If you're going to diet, it's hard, but you think, well, there'll be weight loss at the end. But what is at the end? Some very vague plan for growth. And I'm not convinced that he has this plan for growth. The other thing was he didn't mention immigration at all. There was a particularly appalling part to me where he talked about people don't feel safe to walk down the street in his country, but the sentences following that were because of riots, TVs and the cars on fire, and there's not space in the prison. It's like, no, isn't it largely because of illegal immigration and other kinds of immigration and two-tier policing and things like that and general crime rates? So again, he's constantly blaming the basically white British rioters, nothing about immigration and nothing about the costs of immigration either, because talk about a financial black hole. Immigration combined with our ridiculous welfare system and social housing, there's some money you could save right there.
And 14 billion going on to end the strikes with the rail and
I was going to say, he's already, I mean, before even giving the speech, he's already absolutely shoveling money at unions who now know that they can immediately hold the country to ransom. And as you say, the riots arguably were a gift to him if this is what he wants to do with them, because he's been presented with a way of talking about immigration or anything else that the broader public feel unhappy about, and just presenting them as he's going to keep this evil off the streets. There's
all these justifications, because the justification with this is that is to get Britain running again, the trains running again and so on. But there's, of course, the other side is you're giving way to the unions and they'll say, well, this works.
On to the cover of the Times now, Nick.
Yeah, they have that German deal to turn the corner on Brexit. As you said, you thought we'd already done it, but no, we're going back. We all know that the blob want to go back into Europe, but this is a reset. Don't worry, it's just a reset. But it's a treaty he's working on with Scholz about trade, defence, illegal migration, and he wants it to be a model for other EU countries. And the question is what will they make us do in response, to get access to the single market? Are Brussels going to punish us? Germany want this youth mobility thing. They want citizens under 30 to be allowed to live and work in the UK for up to 3 years. All sounds a bit like free movement, doesn't it? It's an interesting...
Although would that be... would our kids get the same on the other side of the channel? That might be quite popular, broadly speaking, with young people, if it was reciprocal, I think.
You're saying our kids, obviously I don't have any, so I'm not bothered. But and also, Andrew Neil pointed out, a good point as well on Twitter, that Starmer's at minus 16 approval and Scholz has bad approval as well. That's just a side point. Some might argue Starmer's,
is that in
they get on
easier position.
Then?
They're both unpopular.
I would quite like to see, though, freedom of movement for kids under 30, such as mine, who can go, and also freedom of movement for me to go and retire in Spain.
So you mean for everyone, then?
Well, no, roughly between 30 and 60.
I just leave out the middle.
I don't want people...
With respect, Simon, you're the problem. Because you've got to... When they came up with the idea of vaccine passports, I just said, right, I'm never leaving the country again. And that's what the kind of man you have to be.
Yeah. But it's basically they found a black hole with Brexit, and they have to fill it up now. Part of it seems a bit pragmatic, and that maybe Brexit was rushed, and there are things we can do just to improve it a little bit. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like it feels like this is incrementally moving back into where we were before, and is it kind of friends with benefits that we're looking at
I'm
here?
Sure
I'm
that's
not sure how that's going to work out.
I know you probably haven't revised this, but airport cannabis smuggling soars as drug is legalised abroad. There does seem to be a sort of move around Britain generally to ignore cannabis smoking. Have you noticed that?
No, I haven't. Why did you look at me? What are you trying to say?
That was most of the problem.
As you narrow your
airport
eyes.
Cannabis. I think it's a special kind of cannabis they grow in airports.
Well, this is coming in suitcases, apparently. I just noticed, it may just be the hot summer days, but
you just noticed that you
through
can't...
London lately, I seem to walk through...
Lately? It's been like the last 5 years. You can't leave the house without basically getting stoned just from one breath. It's
disgusting. It just smells of crime, doesn't it? Anyway, one more. We have one more paper at least, Telegraph, Kerry.
OK. Smells of crime.
Smells of crime.
Hate crime measures back on agenda despite fears for free speech, which of course is always this balancing act of... We already have laws. We have plenty of laws, and it's really just a case of instigating them. A typical example was a couple of years ago when a group of men drove through Golders Green in London with megaphones shouting to seriously harm, physically harm and kill Jewish women. And the police know who they are. They haven't arrested them, but that's within the laws that we already have. We don't need new laws for it. And this is opening the gate for the blasphemy laws, which I think should be a major concern to people. There's a difference between actual crime and a clear threat and speech that causes harm, which is what we seem to be obsessed by now. And you've got to remember back to the Blair government, they also did this. They brought out loads of... there was all the database society that they had, and loads of laws against free speech. And, recently, they mentioned here is there's a guy who's on police file because he whistled Bob the Builder at his neighbour who felt it was racist, which I'm not quite sure how that could be, whether he comes from Builderland or something. But
I know, he perceived racial hatred, so you can just perceive it about... I perceived it from both of you as I came onto this show, and there's nothing you can do.
The law's not out yet, mate.
But Suella Braverman got rid of that because she brought in guidance to get rid of that kind of nonsense, and they've scrapped that because it's Labour, and it's like, OK, scrap the higher education free speech bill, scrap that, bring in this Islamophobia definition, which is far too robust and ridiculous. And, they claim it's to stop tension. They think tensions have been ignored between Jewish people and Muslims because of this guidance is making things slip through the net or something. It sounded tenuous to me. It
was quite interesting at the Edinburgh Fringe. I noticed that, this time last year, I was interviewed by various people as a stand-up comedian. Did I think it was going to have a chilling effect on comedy? The SNP's slightly... weaponised. They've got a really turbulent hate speech thing, and I said, well, I don't know. We'll see, but I don't. Well, anyway, the only case that came close was Reginald D. Hunter. Was accused of it, by a Jewish couple, and on behalf of a Jewish couple for his jokes against Jewish action, which was kind of ironic, given that everyone was anticipating that it had been brought in to protect Muslims.
But I think it also backfired, though. Well,
exactly.
I think it backfired in another sense, in that the police, because of those accusations, they didn't want to make an arrest with anyone. So I think they probably ignored most accusations that came out from the Fringe this year.
But it does seem to me as well, I will say this, that part of the thing about Brexit was that it was supposed to stop Westminster politicians having a kind of, plausible deniability. Well, what can we do? It's EU rule. And now they're just endlessly seeking to re-legislate when, as you say, the legislation exists. They will find any excuse not to simply act.
Yeah.
Finally, we have the Daily Star.
Yes, this is
more
E.T. E.T. invaders would wipe us all out. And, of course, it's the space boffins, Simon.
Yes.
It's always the boffins, but these are Indian boffins who have predicted that an extraterrestrial program would most likely destroy Earth. So should be a bigger story, really. Should be on all the papers, because that's big, isn't it? Earth being destroyed. I mean, everyone likes Oasis, but I'd have...
urgent but not important, or important but not urgent?
We need to bring out hate speech laws from aliens.
Yeah, I perceive this as hate speech against my race, the human race.
We should have some banners up on the edge of the solar system.
Yesterday was AI was going to kill us all, wasn't it?
Today is the aliens. It's a hate-free zone. Anyway, that's the front pages covered.